I may be a white boy, but I'm not stupid.
I am too smart. I am too smart. I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
What is so special about this egg roll?
Well, what's so special is this is the people's house. And we expect over 40,000 people to be here. It's the largest ever. And we just like to open it up to places, let people see this is their place.
Still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside her body.
Hold on. What about meth?
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services?
I guess DCFS would be...
Oh, it's her body, though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying.
What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that?
In Massachusetts right now, those crisis pregnancy centers that are there to fool people who are looking for pregnancy termination help outnumber true abortion clinics by 3 to 1. We need to shut them down here in Massachusetts, and we need to shut them down all around the country. You should not be able to torture a pregnant person like that.
I'm sick of having my mental condition come into question.
How dare you, sir?
There was a time in America when contests of athletic prowess were a metaphor for the nobility of man. Historic moments forged by the love of the game celebrated the human potential to achieve excellence. But as time passed and the country neared the millennium, something went awry.
I'm gonna go with the charge.
Okay, tell me why.
Justin Herbert, Williams, Keenan Allen.
Okay, all right. I guess we got time for one more.
That offense.
We'll dive in deeper here. Raiders, Chargers. Who are you backing to win this one, Stephen A?
I don't know. I'm gonna go with the Raiders. I'll just go with that.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
But if the forces of evil should rise again to cast a shadow on the heart of the city, call.
Question. How do we call? He gave us a signal.
This day, we rescue a world from mysticism and tyranny, and usher in a future brighter than anything we can imagine.
Screw them. This is your time. Now go out there and take it. I got something to say.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great.
Welcome to the show. You are one-on-one with Wes the Sports Guy here on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Facebook. Eventually, it will be on BitChute. They're not doing live video, but it'll eventually be on BitChute, so thank you for tuning in. Bookmark westthesportsguy.com if you want to get all the links to those videos, which are also in the description down below of this one and every video that you see on all of those sites. Bookmark westthesportsguy.com. Real quick, I know Mother's Day is coming up, and that might be coming as a shock to you. So sorry, but I'm giving you about a 2 week head start to get yourself, or get your mother, excuse me, get your mom, your significant other, if she is a mom or grandmother, whoever, get her something nice for Mother's Day with a gift box from coffeebrandcoffee.com. If you use the link in the description below, I will get a portion of that sale, which, if you're wondering why I've been trying to sell coffee and tea and cocoa from coffeebrandcoffee.com for better part of a year and a half now, I think, is because what I get from those sales, which I do appreciate you using the link or promo code to give me some credit for those sales, is because a lot of what you're seeing right now, especially with me live streaming, pretty much everything that's coming from those sales is going into this. I'm not saving it for a rainy day or anything like that. I'm using it to do more with my hobby, which is to talk about sports or talk about whatever it is that I might feel is necessary to discuss in any particular week, but sports especially. So this is definitely one of those days where you get to hear me opine about the 2024 NFL draft. And I don't know, for me, it seemed a bit, I don't want to say lackluster, because usually the NFL does a pretty good job of putting on a good show, a good product, good presentation, I guess is another way of saying it. But I don't know, this year just didn't feel like any other year that it typically would for an NFL draft. And I guess it's because my perspective on a lot of things has changed. And I'm going to show you an example of that, where I decided to see the NFL's, make sure I got that up correctly. Bear with me. I wanted to react to the NFL's video here of saying that this is wild, the NFL draft. And I decided to opine, and I tagged Bray the Gaines in it. Not that I'm trying to get any more attention on this than, you know, it deserves. I mean, it does deserve a lot more attention, obviously, but I decided to opine and say, wouldn't it be wild if this was a peaceful gathering of people united in saying biological men do not belong in women's sports or women's spaces for that matter? So, to just bring that into proper perspective, I think that is something that needed to be said, given the fact that, yes, that is a lot of people in one gathering to watch. Yes, it is technically a sporting event, not anything that you're seeing game wise, but there needs to be some proper perspective nowadays. And that's just the one thing I wanted to opine during the draft while it was going on. I really didn't want to say much else, because I figured, hey, once the draft is completely over, I'm going to do another live stream talking about this stuff and give my more nuanced opinions about what had happened in the NFL draft. But if you feel that your team did a great job in the NFL draft, did a great job getting its players that they needed, getting the best player available, whatever it may be, please do leave a comment below on this video. Smash the like button as well if you like what you're seeing. If you like anything else that I've been posting here on these channels, whether they be at YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, or Odyssey, again, the links are at westthesportsguy.com or in the description below of the video. But do leave a comment if you do believe that your team had a very good NFL draft or an awful NFL draft. Let's just say you took a player that was probably not best suited for your current situation, which I will get to that elephant in the room shortly with the one team in particular that you're probably thinking of that everybody just would not stop talking about. So to recap real quick, with the first round, a lot of people were talking about. Now, I should preface this by saying I did not hear, thankfully, when I was watching the first round of this draft, listening to it. Thankfully, I did not hear anybody trying to compare this to the 1983 draft. I didn't hear that. Now, if you did in some circles, it might have been from ESPN. I don't know. But I was watching an NFL Network. I avoided ESPN for stuff like this. So I went directly to the source. I went to the NFL Network. I didn't hear them say anything about the 1983 draft in comparison of like good quarterbacks that you're going to get in this draft. I didn't hear it in that sense. I heard it in a sense of how many quarterbacks were expected to be drafted in the first round. Yeah, there was mentions of 1983. There were also mentions of 1999. We all know what happened in that draft. But I didn't hear like a direct talent comparison between this one and 1983. Because if there was, I certainly would have pointed it out of how ludicrous that was. Now, that's not to say that it's a possibility there could be two guys. Historically speaking, in a draft like this, when you have this many quarterbacks taken in the first round, historically speaking, you could potentially have two guys that could turn out to be all pros, Hall of Famers, however you want to describe it. The possibility is there. I don't think we're going to get that in this draft. And I'll put my case together here shortly. So as you can see, you got Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. Those are your first three quarterbacks taken by the Bears, Commanders, or Commies, as some people like to call them, because they were the Washington Redskins. Ooh, shouldn't have said that. And at third, the New England Patriots. Now, pardon me while I put my eyes on, because unfortunately I do have bad eyesight. So as I look through this, the first round, you see Marvin Harrison Jr., the first skill player taken at number 4 to the Cardinals. The Chargers went with a lineman, left tackle Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. Malik Neighbors went to the Giants at number 6, another talented receiver at LSU. Another lineman, J.C. Latham, went to Tennessee. And the Atlanta Falcons took Michael Penix, another quarterback out of Washington University. Rome Odunze went to the Bears at number 9. So you could make the case that the Bears came out pretty good, getting a quarterback receiver combo in the top 10. And then the 5th quarterback taken, J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan, number 10 to Minnesota. They traded up one spot. Offensive lineman to the Jets, which makes sense because you got to protect Aaron Rodgers. Not to say that Aaron Rodgers potentially wouldn't have gotten hurt last year with a better offensive line, but that's what everybody's looking at with the Jets there. And then Denver Bo Nix taken with the 12th pick. So 6 quarterbacks were taken in the first 12 picks. I don't believe many of these quarterbacks are going to have good, successful careers. Reason being is that their college careers, while each had their own career path, their own different circumstances, different schemes, different systems, and so forth, I just don't see a Caleb Williams. Yes, he did have a Heisman season a couple years ago for USC. This last season at USC, pretty close to being pretty much a disaster, if you want to be blunt about it. But I don't see a guy like Caleb Williams bringing that kind of diva mentality, I'll say. Like he's a wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver. He's supposed to be a quarterback. You're supposed to be the leader of that locker room, the leader of that team, and the quarterback of that offense. And now he does have a very good surrounding supporting cast now compared to what Justin Fields had for the Chicago Bears, which somebody pointed out Justin Fields must be his blood must be boiling after watching what was going down with the Bears in this offseason. But hey, Justin Fields is now in a better spot, better organization with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He doesn't have to play right away if he's going to be backing up Russell Wilson this coming year. So maybe Justin Fields has a resurgence of what he should have been when the Bears drafted him only 3 years ago, mind you. But the Bears and Caleb Williams, it might work initially. Long term, I don't know. I don't see that kind of the diva mentality that Caleb Williams currently has. I don't see that working long term wherever he is, if it is Chicago long term or elsewhere. I just don't see it panning out well unless he changes that attitude completely. Jaden Daniels, yes, he did have a Heisman season. Very good year for LSU. He did play in college for quite a while. It was at least 4 or 5 years. He was originally at Arizona State, I believe, before he got to LSU his last 2 years in college. But there's also questions with him and his size and whether he can take a hit or whether he will learn how to just not try to make something out of nothing. When a play is dead, just end it and move on to the next play. Is he going to be able to curtail that with the scrambling ability that he does have? He did show that in college that he can be under duress and throw in crucial situations without having to be that, electric football where you're just spinning around and then deciding, okay, I got to now throw the ball and make something happen. So is there enough there for Washington to say, okay, Jaden Daniels is the guy moving forward? I don't know. He had a Heisman season. Again, I don't see it being a long-term success with Jaden Daniels. And this isn't knocking anybody in a sense that because of their it's very fickle, I should say, nowadays when it comes to critiquing people or giving constructive criticism. Everybody gets super sensitive about this stuff. But this is just my take on it right now. I'm willing to have my mind changed. I'm willing to be proven wrong. But historically speaking, it doesn't look good in these situations. And I'll prove my point further when I bring up the draft of 3 years ago and what has now just happened to a lot of those guys this past, or technically current offseason we are in the NFL. Drake May, there wasn't enough there for a lot of people. Everybody loves the upside. I heard that word a lot. Besides hearing tackle during the first round, to me, I couldn't believe how much tackle was being said during the broadcast of the first round because it sounded like a Pokemon character. I kept hearing the word tackle. Like there was a Pokemon character named Tackle that just kept saying tackle, tackle, tackle every single time a pick was coming up after the first 5, really when Joe Alt got drafted. That's when it went off like that. But I digress about what I was hearing with upside and Drake May. He's in a horrible situation with the way the Patriots are now. Not to say that it's because the organization's now completely changed with its face, not just as the quarterback now after letting Tom Brady go. We all know that story, but now Mac Jones has been traded off. He's not there anymore. And now they're starting fresh. New coaching staff as well. It's going to be rough. So best of luck to Drake, but I don't know if he's going to be the guy that's going to come out on top in the end. And I'll get to Michael Penix here in a second because that's really the pinnacle of what I was going to give some nuanced take about the Atlanta Falcons and Michael Penix. But to go to number 10, to skip Penix and put a bookmark in that, J.J. McCarthy going to Minnesota. I think out of the entirety of this quarterback class, yes, I did mention Caleb Williams has a pretty good supporting cast around him right now, but I'd say J.J. McCarthy has a pretty good chance just because he's got arguably one of, if not the best receiver in the NFL right now, Justin Jefferson. If the Vikings can keep Justin Jefferson somewhat content with his current standing and give him the extension that he's expecting in the not too distant future, J.J. McCarthy has a tremendous opportunity to prove a lot of the doubters, which McCarthy being at the University of Michigan under the former head coach Jim Harbaugh, is now with the LA Chargers. That was a run-first offense. That was a pro style. You're not going to throw the ball 30 times in this contest, whatever, or against whoever it is. We're just going to run the ball and make sure that is our sticking point. So McCarthy, even though, yes, he is a first-round pick, some say that's based off the dreaded word upside. I think he's in a better situation than most of the other quarterbacks, aside from, again, Caleb Williams would be the only exception, I would say. But McCarthy, I think, is in a good spot. I think there's a chance he could succeed, but it's all going to hinge on what Justin Jefferson decides to do and if he wants to stick there long term. Because if he does, I think that bodes well for McCarthy. If not, well, then you got to start over again and try to surround him with good receivers and a good running back situation. Because I know the running back situation there's a little bit up in the air. I know they got Aaron Jones. Now that just came to mind. Aaron Jones is there on a 1-year prove-it kind of contract to stick it to Green Bay for 2 times a season. They do have TJ Hawkinson, good tight end. He's coming off an injury, though, so that might slow things down to start the season. But I say McCarthy's in a good spot where he was taken. And then with Bo Nix going to the Denver Broncos, saw him play a lot in college. He bounced around. I think he was at Auburn at first before he went to Oregon. He might have been somewhere else too, but I remember him at Auburn. Then went to Oregon this last year, had a very productive year with the Oregon Ducks. Another guy that's played college football a lot, kind of like Jaden Daniels and also Michael Penix. Bo Nix is in an interesting spot. He's got a good head coach that is what some would say is a quarterback guru in Sean Payton. Might not hold that opinion if you're Russell Wilson after what happened last year with Sean Payton. But Bo Nix is in a good spot. He's probably going to play right away just because of how much football he's already played in college. And being in a quarterback room where you've got Zach Wilson, former number 2 overall pick now from the New York Jets, I think it bodes well for Bo Nix to be the guy in Denver. Plus, considering Denver used their first-round pick to get Bo, that just cinches it right there for him. But again, I'm not confident that Bo Nix is going to be a long-term solution for any team that took him. So now we get to Michael Penix and the Atlanta Falcons taking him 8th overall. Basically, with Michael Penix and the Falcons taking him 8th overall, a lot of different ways people were talking about this. Now, the first way is, hey, wait a minute. You just signed Kirk Cousins to a massive contract. You just committed a good deal of your cap to a guy like Kirk Cousins, and this is supposed to be your win now moment. Why are you drafting Michael Penix? Well, Atlanta made the argument, which I tend to see it as the main reason why they did it. If your selling point with Kirk Cousins is that you're in win now mode, you want to win, and this is your limited window with him. So your expectation is that you're not going to be picking top 10 again. You're not going to even be picking top 15 or even top 20. If you're win now mode and you want to constantly get after winning a Super Bowl finally. So that's what the expectation is going to be. So if you're in a spot to draft a quarterback like this, how they view Michael Penix, you're not going to be able to draft this guy without giving up a lot of assets to move up to draft that potential quarterback of the future down the road. So I see that logic of where they're currently at. However, I think it was a foolish move in the sense that if this is the guy that you really wanted, yes, there were other teams that were looking at quarterbacks, but 2 other guys got picked after Michael Penix when you drafted him, being the Falcons. So I understand the risk, but I don't believe those teams were going to take Michael Penix. I could be wrong, but everything publicly that they've said, just going off of what their word is, they got the guy that they were coveting, that they were going after. So I'll take that at their word. If you're the Falcons, also in win now mode with Kirk Cousins, looking at their roster, other than, yes, they have Drake London, they have Kyle Pitts, they have Bijan Robinson, a receiver, tight end, and running back respectively. That's a decent haul for their most recent first-round picks. So you're adding that with Kirk Cousins already, with him coming in. But what happens when somebody gets hurt? Not saying Cousins is the one that gets hurt, but if one of those guys gets hurt, how's your depth behind those guys? I looked at the roster. It's not great. So it probably would have boded well for the Falcons in that spot in the top 10 to take a Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia, or take Roma Dunze, who was drafted one pick behind you by the Bears at number 9. Get another weapon to add to what you already have on offense to surround Kirk Cousins with guys that will get you that extra playoff win or possibly an appearance in a Super Bowl. This is not to say that Kirk Cousins is going to have that kind of immediate success in the playoffs this time around, because he never had it when he was with Washington. He only had one playoff win, to my knowledge, with the Minnesota Vikings, with a few appearances, but only one victory. So his history in the playoffs is not great. So maybe it'd be more beneficial, if you're the Falcons being in this position, to add more talent around Kirk Cousins in that win now mode, rather than drafting the quarterback now. And it was mentioned by the Falcons brass, the GM and the head coach, that they went the Green Bay model. They saw success with the Green Bay Packers model, and they wanted to emulate that. Okay. I get that also. The problem with that, though, is that even with all that immediate success that they were having, being the Green Bay Packers, with Brett Favre still there, contemplating retirement every year for the last 4 or 5 years that he was there, it seemed. When they drafted Aaron Rodgers, he was in the mid-20s when he was drafted. That famous draft where he was looked at as most likely the number 1 pick. When he didn't get drafted, he fell all the way into the mid-20s. That's when Green Bay swooped in and took him. And he sat for about 3 seasons, I believe. And then I shouldn't say almost, pretty much the same thing happened with Jordan Love. It was about 3 seasons that he was sitting until he finally got to start last year with Aaron Rodgers not being there anymore. But again, that's with sustained success. They were still able to get a quarterback in the 20s. And some looked at when they drafted Jordan Love that they definitely reached for Jordan Love. But Green Bay, to their credit, they looked at it and said, okay, now's the time. We probably should just go ahead and get a quarterback right now. So the difference with Atlanta doing that, though, is that they had the 8th pick. Was that the time to get a quarterback when you just got one in Kirk Cousins, who has that proven, sustained regular season success? I didn't say playoff success, but he has gotten teams to the playoffs. So is it best to then think about your future with the Green Bay model when you're picking 8th overall, when that's not what happened in Green Bay? That's where I find fault in that part of the argument. And then the other part is because the NFL becoming so fickle with front offices and head coaches nowadays. This was a way, in my opinion, to get the head coach and GM an extra 3-4 years on the back end if the Kirk Cousins experiment does not pan out the way they hope it will. They gave him a 4-year contract. We all know NFL contracts aren't really guaranteed. You can cut a guy after 1 year. Look at what happened with Russell Wilson. When they traded for him, extended him, he only had 2 years and then gone. Huge cap hit for the next couple of years for Denver. But again, that's a story for another day. Just pointing out how NFL contracts are. Kirk Cousins could only be there for 2 years out of the 4 that he's contracted for. Atlanta could say this is a disaster, didn't work out, and they move on. So with that, the head coach and GM thought, let's go ahead and get this quarterback just in case, as a backup plan, in case this just completely blows up in our face. And we've already got the solution coming instantly for us. We've already figured out what we're going to do. It buys us an extra 3-4 years in our jobs. So I could certainly see that being a likely scenario where they're thinking long-term about their own jobs, not so much what's best for the team in the immediate. They're thinking about their future, not so much the team's future. So that's another possibility in my opinion, is certainly at play here. They're not going to admit that, obviously, but I could certainly see that happening. But all in all, I think this draft is a sign that it's not going to get much better. Everybody, like especially the NFL Network, that first round. I mean, I know they're paid to hype things up, especially for the NFL Network, but wow, they went a little above and beyond for it. But the way college football is now with the NIL and especially the transfer portal stuff, if you thought free agency palooza was crazy in the professional leagues, college is ridiculous right now. Absolutely ridiculous. I can't even attempt to keep up with what's going on. It's just I'm out. I tapped out. I'm done. I'm just looking to see what the team's success is and follow as best I can from there. But trying to figure out what players are, I think that impacted this draft to a degree. It just didn't seem like there was just a lot of hype around the totality of the players here. This was just okay. Maybe there's cherry picking a few players here and there. Who's like Marvin Harrison Jr., Brock Bowers at Georgia, Harrison Jr. played at Ohio State. Just a couple guys here and there was where I was interested in seeing where those guys would end up. Not so much with the quarterbacks, because like I said, I don't believe most of these quarterbacks are going to have long, sustained, successful careers. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. But I was looking at a few other players here and there to see where they were going to end up. That was my interest in this draft, but I just didn't see a lot of the hype that you normally would see out of an NFL draft of even 2, 4, 5 years ago. Because what's happening in college is that a lot of these guys have played for 2, sometimes 3, 4 schools by the time they're done, and they've moved on to be in the NFL draft. It's just, I don't know. Am I overreacting to that? Because I think it's going to get a little bit worse going forward in the NFL draft, especially because this is not going to tamp down in at any time soon, because there's nothing to regulate the player movement going on with that transfer portal. I get the NIL stuff. That's not what I'm getting at. It's the transfer portal specifically that is ruining a lot of that intrigue with college football right now. And then, yeah, okay, you're expanding the playoff to 16 teams, I think is what it is, from 4 to 16. I don't know if that's going to do anything to help that, because just like what happened with it was Florida State. Yeah, Florida State was undefeated. They didn't make it to the playoff last year because their quarterback got injured, and the committee decided, nope, we're not going to have a team with a second or third string quarterback that nobody's heard of into the college football playoff, and nope, we're just going to keep Florida State out of it. And then what ended up happening, which I wasn't paying attention because all we're focusing on now is the college football playoff. Florida State, yeah, they got a New Year's Day bowl game, I believe. I don't know who they played. I know they got trounced because most of the players that were helping that team have an undefeated season just bowed out of the bowl game. They either were going to transfer or they were getting ready for the NFL draft. And there goes your bowl season, the coveted bowl season that everybody was complaining about when there was talk of a playoff. Now just the bowl season doesn't matter anymore. But I think long term that's going to affect this NFL draft and any kind of hype or whatever mystique that people want to point out into it. But let me show you before I call it a show and just remind you about the 2021 NFL draft. Oh boy, this was a doozy. So just quarterbacks, mind you. I'm only looking at quarterbacks. As I kind of teased it earlier with 2024 and now 2021. What happened to these quarterbacks in the first round? They all changed they all changed teams except for Trevor Lawrence. So you see Trevor Lawrence went number 1 to Jacksonville. Yes, there might be some credence to what happened with Urban Meyer his rookie year and everything. That was just a bad team. It was an all-around bad team. Everybody agreed to just put that as a mulligan. So then in 2022, his sophomore year, he gets a better coach than Doug Peterson. Hey, Trevor Lawrence has a resurgence, and yes, he is the quarterback we thought he was when he played at Clemson and won a national title. And I think he did win a Heisman Trophy too, but I could be wrong on that. But hey, Trevor Lawrence, he proved us right. But then what happened last year? Just dud. Absolute horrible season by Trevor Lawrence. Zach Wilson at number 2. That was about as bad as it got for a Jets quarterback. And Zach Wilson now is in Denver. I believe there was a pick swap of like 7th round picks, and maybe the Jets got a 6th round pick in a trade before this draft. So that was a dud. Yes, my Niners absolutely screwed the pooch on this one. Trey Lance, he was not the guy. The way I remember how that whole draft was coming about and the way that things were coming together with what Frisco gave up to get the 3rd overall pick as well. Obviously, they were going to take a quarterback, but they bought into the hype. They bought into the upside. that word. They bought into the which everybody said the upside was through the roof for Trey Lance. Frisco bought into it, and it turns out yes, I know the COVID stuff shut things down unnecessarily in a lot of things, including sports as well, professional sports, college, high school, everything up and down. It was unnecessary. We all know this. It turns out when Trey Lance does not play his last year in college football and sits out an entire year, it's probably not the best thing for anybody to do. Not just for Trey Lance, but for anybody. Not the best thing to do. So that probably played a large part into why he's not the guy. So he's no longer there. We already know this. At number 11 was Justin Fields. Now he's been traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, also I believe for a 6th round pick. So that's the value of these quarterbacks. 3 years later, mind you. This is only 3 years later. And then the last one taken in the 1st round here, Mac Jones, 15th overall by the Patriots. And he was also dealt. And he's now backing up Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. I believe also for a 6th round pick. You can correct me if I'm wrong about the trade or draft compensation that these teams got for these quarterbacks. But the point remains that this was just 3 seasons ago, and 2 of these 5 teams that drafted quarterbacks just drafted new quarterbacks in this current draft. So, to bring it all back, that is the state of where we are in the NFL when it comes to the quarterback position. Obviously, the rule changes have played a large part into the emphasis on it, and you got to get the guy, you got to get the quarterback no matter what now. So even when you've signed a guy like Kirk Cousins, you got to get the quarterback because we always have to prepare for the very near future, whether it be 1, 2, 3 seasons down the road. Got to have a quarterback because the rules emphasize if you don't have a quarterback, you're pretty much going to be left out in the dust like everybody else is, unfortunately. So get used to it. I've made no qualms about it. I'm predicting it. When the Olympics happen in 2028 in LA, they're having flag football. The NFL's very happy about that. A lot of prominent NFL players were happy about that. They want to participate in flag football for the Olympics in 2028. I'm not kidding. Because of all that hype and the way that the NFL is promoting, it's a global game now. Flag football is coming. And I'm willing to bet it's going to tie into the Summer Olympics in 2028 of how this whole thing's going to come about. Based off of that, they're no longer going to tackle. It's going to be flag football. And when that happens, I'm out. I'm just speaking for myself, but I'm out. Once that happens, no, it's no longer what it was always advertised to be, what it was always monetized for, because they made a lot of money on those guys from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but especially when I started watching in the early to mid 90s to going into the 2010s, almost 2020. It was still somewhat tackle football going to 2020, but nope, we're heading for flag football by the end of this decade. It's coming. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's sad realization. But again, how did your team do for this draft? Is your team going to be going for the Super Bowl? Is your team going to be winning your division? Is your team going to finish dead last based off of what they did in this draft? How's their offseason playing out? Leave a comment below. Get your Mother's Day gift box at coffeebrandcoffee.com. The link is in the description below. Save yourself some money on that gift box. Get the order in now, because by next weekend, they're either going to be sold out or it's going to be too late to get it before Mother's Day. But use that link in the description below of this video to get your mom a Mother's Day gift box from coffeebrandcoffee.com. Bookmark WrestleSportsGuy.com as well for all the links, social media links, and everything else you see on that website that will be previewed. I'll probably do a recap, or not a recap, but just kind of like summarization of the first month of the MLB season, either the next episode or the one after. But I do appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you live next time.